Recently I figured I should get away from Jenkins and Ansible. So I'm going to make a little change. I got it all done. I'm just going to show a quick video on how it's all set up now. I'm going to have to blur out a couple things because of keys and stuff like that, but don't worry about it. Anyway, what I want you to look at right now is this sensor readings, or we're on our main website. I'm going to change that to sensor reading. Actually, we'll make it latest sensor reading, because right now it just shows the last sensor reading in the database, basically. And if I save it and commit, simple commit, I should spell it right, just poops and stickers. Excuse me. Oh yeah, yes, I'm on the master branch. I only have one branch at the moment. It's actually I moved from GitHub to GitLab, so I'm doing everything out of master for now, just during testing. Obviously I should do it outside, but whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to come into GitLab, go into the CI/CD, which is where I was, just refreshing the page, and I've got it broken down into several different steps. I have an init script, which does a version rolling. The new version is 4.x, and x will be that number. The number is a secret number, not really a secret number, it's a variable held within GitLab, and it increments each time. I can show you the script for that in a second. Then it does a bunch of prep stuff, and right now it's doing the Docker build. It's going to build the Docker image and push it up to GitHub. Not GitHub. Docker Hub. Oh my goodness. Let's take a look at that real quick. Fairly quick. Actually, it's kind of slow. But there was a little bit of manual setup on the host because I'm running the GitLab runner. I had to set up a couple things manually. Obviously, the runner itself, install it, run it, and then I did a Docker logon, so it caches those credentials in the JSON file, so that next time it's already logged on, you do a Docker push and it's good to go. Alright, so we're all done there. It's a little weird. It says that's excuse me, that's the version, but it has an actual version number. Let me show you real quick here. Excuse me. So if we go in, look at the tags, 4 dot something, and this one was pushed just recently. So 434. I'm at 433. So if I updated, if I rolled the next step here, we would go to 434. It doesn't actually deploy the container at the moment because it's on a skip stage. This post action, I'll show you that also. It just makes it a default. Well, I'll show you the whole thing in a second. But we're going to play that. Hooty-hoo! Such a fun YouTube channel. This is going to be really interesting. Yeah, anyway. So it pulls a bunch of variables from the host environment variable and echoes it into an environment variable file that I use to bind into a Docker compose, so that when the Docker container starts, it has the environment variable just kind of passed along. Does migrations and rolls the static files in. Poops and stickers. Yeah, there were no changes. The only change is when we refresh the page here, it'll change that to latest sensor reading, and the version number down the bottom is 434. Hooray! And I pull up my code here in delay because there may have to blur out a couple things. Excuse me. Alright, where is my GitLab thingy? So we got broken up into 4 different steps. Actually, let's see if we can do it this way. Yeah, there we go. Which is actually 5 because the last one. So we have a init stage, prep stage, build stage and deploy, which is prep, or init, prep, build, and deploy. Init just does that increment for the version control type thing. And we're going to do a bunch of prep work. We're going to install Python 3 if it's not installed. We're going to install Python 3 development tools if it's not installed. Activate the virtual environment, do a bunch of pip stuff, which includes installing Ansible and Ansible Vault, because the certificate and key is in the repo, but they're encrypted, so you have to decrypt them. That's the other thing that you have to do manually, is create the Ansible Vault password key, which gets used right here. Vault password file. That's kind of weird to, yeah. So it doesn't actually show you what the password is. You have to go onto the host and cat that out, and it just echoes it in. So that's all good there. All right. And then it moves the certs from the. It kind of does. The GitLab runner does a checkout of the code, and this moves it to a static known location, or copies it, I should say. Copy. Anyway, then build. It's going to install Docker if it's not installed, because it might not be installed. And it looks like we also had to do Docker compose in there later. That might be in there. Otherwise, that's a note that I have to update this thing too, because Docker compose wasn't automatically installed. Anyway, we're going to build a Docker image called my Docker image and tag it using that thing. Unicorn release is passed in. Excuse me. Unicorn release is right here. It's a file, and I pass it on. I keep it for 20 minutes. It doesn't change, but whatever, you get the idea. And if everything's good to go, it'll sit there and wait, because we have a manual stage. The manual stage is going to make a temporary file and set that version. It does a bunch of version prep work, basically. Parsing. And it updates my release file, release JSON using JQ replace, string replace kind of deal. Updates the build date for the page, which is here. Build date gets updated, that gets updated. That's what all that stuff does. Then we're going to copy it to a known good location where we are going to use it. We're going to set the buffer to Unicorn release, which has that version information. Pull the environment variables from the host and put it into a file. Right? And set a couple of things. This is just so we can define the image name dynamically based off of the build number. So first time it's 433, well, 41, you get the idea. But each time it'll update that container number to push and pull back down and use. And the compose file is already set up to use that also. And then it does migrations and collect static, but only when I tell it manually. Let's create super user. Don't worry, this is not my actual password, because I've imported my database and it has a different user. Anyway, there's a module in here, create super user with password, and you can specify the username, the email address, and the password to use for that user. Spaceballs joke there is 1, 2, 3, 4 on the same combination of my luggage, but that's not the actual password on my database. Docker compose. I may have to blur this out. We'll see. No. Okay. So here's what I was talking about earlier. It builds image name from. It sets image name in here, right there, based off of the build that was done. Actually, no, that goes into the environment variable. It gets set somewhere else. I forget where. Drawn a blank. I can't think it's at the moment. Anyway. Yes, I do have to blur those up. My password. super creative, really intense, hard to figure out password. No. But you don't have access to the box anyway, so it's okay. Also doing volume mounting, data binding, whatever. Excuse me. Here, and we're going to bind to the asserts. This is inside the container, this is outside the container. And we're going to bind that release file. So it, because the release JSON is used inside the Docker container to build or to display that and this other one, as well as a another variable. If it's test or dev, we got test. There's a little test tube up there, and we'll start a development one. Actually, there are 4, because if it's dev, it says the word dev up here, but I don't have a dev server. I have a debugging server. So I got debugging. Their dev is not technically implemented at the moment, but this would be a little gray word that says dev on it. And this is my test server, and then prod doesn't have anything, which is controlled by controlled by, I can't show you the thing. Actually, yes I can. Yeah, I can. There's no password in there. Yeah. It's controlled by a cut. So this is a cut for prod, so there's no thing, but if I changed it to, actually we'll change it real quick. If I change this to dev, if you want to do that. Probably gotta restart. Nope, I don't. Okay, so there's that little dev logo. If I change it to test, you get a little test tube, and change it back to, I think it's even debug. It's either debug or, yeah, debug. I forget what happens when it's invalid value. It assumes prod. Okay. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell, and that's where it gets this name also, Ben SpelledABC. Right, go like that. It wasn't that one. That was down here. Oh, application title. Such a dork, because that's author. Anywho, so as you saw, we're not using Ansible anymore. Well, we are, but not an Ansible playbook. The only thing we're using Ansible for is to decrypt the file, the vault or whatever that has the certificates, and other sensitive passwords. And no more Jenkins. So that's it. I'm gonna blur stuff out, and we'll see this in probably a couple hours. It's 3:30, 4 o'clock now. Yeah, 3:30. Alright, y'all. Deuces.